Thank you for joining the Detroit Buy, Hold, Invest podcast, home of the greatest self-proclaimed real estate agent in Detroit. I'm Dave Rabior, Clyde Realty, www.detroitbuyholdinvest.com. Yes, notice I said self-proclaimed. I love to slip that in. All right, let's get this started because I can make that intro go all day, but we're not going to do that. Today we're going to talk about something that it's like a constant struggle for me as a agent that services investors, especially investors that are not from the Detroit area. So you have all these people and they're going on to various different real estate websites and they're looking at all these different resources and they're going on websites like Bigger Pockets and Facebook and they're joining local Facebook groups and they're trying to do all these things so that they can get plugged in from out of the Detroit market, and some from inside of the Detroit market. And it's not as common, but it is happening where people go into this market, they start looking around, they figure out that they want to, buy here. They figure out the price point, it looks very attractive. They look at the rents, they look at these other, opportunities out there like Baltimore, Memphis, Toledo, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, all that stuff. And then they say, okay, well, Detroit looks like the most bang for my buck. And so I want to, go to Detroit and I want to buy there. Hold on. Let me just make sure that this doesn't do something funny. Anyway, let's get back to it. So they come in the market, you identify that this is where you want to invest, and you start reaching out and trying to find who it is that's going to be the one to represent you when you come here and you start trying to buy stuff. And it's very simple to find someone who seems like they want to help you. They seem like they know a little bit about the market. They talk really good on the phone. They talk really good via email, and they really want you to utilize them for services so that they can sell you houses here. And a lot of them claim that they can do all of these different things. They'll try to say, oh, I'm an expert and I've flipped all these houses and I have, access to all of these resources and this and that. And a lot of that stuff is just a ploy by people to get you to start buying properties from them. And then very quickly they plug you in to a really bad investment. They don't have the resources that they claim to. They don't have the contractors. They don't have the property management. They don't have anything. As a matter of fact, a lot of these people don't even own a single rental property, and they're out here advertising their services that they're some sort of an expert. And many of them are wholesalers. And if you're not sure what a wholesaler is, basically a wholesaler is marketing directly to distressed sellers with the intention of trying to purchase their property. And in most cases, well over 80%, let's just call it that and be honest with the people about these people that call themselves wholesalers. They don't have any money. So they're out here and they're sending, postcards and handwritten letters, and they're putting up these bandit signs all over town, and they are, seeking people out on, these softwares that they sell that are for wholesalers to identify not only just distressed sellers, but also potential buyers. And sometimes they're looking at buyers that have, already purchased a few properties, and they reach out to you and say, hey, I'm a wholesaler in this market and I have inventory and I'm wondering if you would be interested in looking at it and I can sell it to you for a deep discount and all of that stuff. And they come to you and you're an investor, so you really want to get in front of these opportunities so you can get cheaper houses so that you have more meat on the bone for whatever it is your strategy is. And for some people, they want to flip for profit. Some people want to buy these properties and just put their money into them to hold them as rentals to get a cap rate return or an ROI that they find acceptable. Some of them are trying to buy them and then renovate them and rent them, then refinance and try to pull their cash out to recycle it and all that stuff. Excuse me. And the problem is, when someone delivers you an off-market property, and if you know what you're doing and you're in the market, doing things in this market every day, like I am, it's like a lot of these deals, when I look at them and they send them to me, they are clearly not not deals at all. They're extremely overvalued, ARV wise, and the projected rehabs on them aren't even close. And you got to understand that these are being produced by people who don't, for the most part, they have no money. They don't buy any houses, so they don't do any rehabs. They don't have rentals. Most of these guys are learning through companies like Fortune Builders, or they're watching a bunch of YouTube videos to learn how to refinance their house and pull money or get cash some way to get into this wholesaling business where they're spending all this money on Google ad spend. And they create pay-per-click campaigns with these websites they put together on various different, GoDaddy type, Squarespace, internet website builders, and they create these, wholesaler websites with squeeze pages where they're also utilizing that to get people to contact them by Googling, I want to sell my house for cash or whatever. And so they get, excuse me, today is the solar eclipse, by the way. And for some reason, like, my allergies are acting up, so forgive me for that. But anyway, these guys are marketing to people, and basically what they do is they go out and they, tell these sellers, hey, I have cash and I want to buy your house. And they create this facade that they're going to buy the house, and they talk a seller into signing an assignable purchase agreement with them where they claim to be the buyer, but then they want to have full access to continue to market the property to people like us who have the money to purchase the property and are serious about doing something with it. And the problem is they don't communicate what they're doing to these sellers. They lie to them, and then they produce these properties to the end buyers that have extremely overinflated ARVs. They have rehab budgets built into them that aren't even feasible. They have a handful of pictures at best that weren't even taken by them, and they're marketing these. And I see investors literally getting ripped off by these people all the time, getting stuck in buying these houses that aren't even a deal. And they have extremely large amounts of issues in various different ways. They could have foundation problems, sewer issues. They could have, problems on the title, all that stuff. And somehow they end up getting them through these title companies here. There's a few of them locally that it's easy to say that when there's a seedy type of deal and you see that particular company involved in it, there's definitely a cause for concern. But when you're out there representing yourself and you're dealing with a person who's assigning the contract to you, you don't have the same, there's not the same repercussion for if they lie. If a seller in a traditional sale with, two real estate agents, they have to fill out a seller disclosure. They have to fill out a lead-based paint disclosure. They have to be honest about if they know that there's any pre-existing issues. And if they don't disclose that, you can sue them for non-disclosure if they sell you a house that has a really bad issue and they knew about it. And then they sell it to you and don't disclose that. And then down the road, you face financial damages because of something that they omitted. Then you can absolutely go to an attorney and try to sue them for, not disclosing that. Now, the agents are not liable. It's the seller. It's a buyer-seller issue, right? Now, is it ethical for a listing agent to not disclose that? Well, no. But, if a seller doesn't disclose issues to the agent, some agents aren't capable of identifying that there's certain issues with the house that may be obvious to someone like me, or it might be obvious to someone who does construction, or someone who is used to buying a lot of houses and has a little bit more experience. Some things are not identifiable like you would believe. The problem is, in an off-market transaction where you're doing an assignment of contract, the wholesaler is simply getting you to sign a piece of paper that allows them to sell you the purchase agreement to you for a fee. So they're not a seller. They have no responsibility or duty to even be truthful. They're not a licensed agent or anything, so there's no code of ethics for them. They literally are just selling you a piece of paper, and if it works out, cool. If it don't, there's nothing you can really do to them. And I've seen many times in these off-market transactions where, in the purchase agreement, it is a requirement that you receive a warranty deed at closing, but then these title companies will put exceptions in the title commitment that essentially make the title commitment not valid. or it's not worth the paper it's written on. And it's like buying a cheap insurance policy for your house. It might be good enough for you to say you have insurance, but if you have a situation where you really need to use it, you're not going to have the coverage that you hope that you would, like liability wise. Let's say someone falls out in front of your house and they break their leg and decide to sue you. If you're a landlord and you have the cheapest policy known to man, like it's safe to say the coverage that you probably need to have is not going to be there. And then you face, some personal responsibility, even if you have an LLC, and I'll get into that another time, but essentially you don't really need to have an LLC for every single house you own. That's like folklore, but people decide that they want to, and they go and they set up an LLC, but they have no operating agreement. And then it's not worth the paper it's written on to protect you from anything. And then also there's a lot of things that you can and can't do when you have an LLC that would protect you in case of liability, which people don't even think about or know about. And then they go out and they do some things that make it to where like any good attorney can just blow a hole right through your LLC and you'll be personally responsible. But you're out here, setting up LLCs and now creating these additional tax returns and all this extra money to protect yourself from this liability that eventually you're going to find out you're not covered at all and you're going to get screwed. So just do things right and ask the questions to people that know what they're doing, and you can avoid these problems in the long run. But back to what I was saying, you get somebody who doesn't have an ethical obligation to be honest to you. And if they aren't, you're not going to, there's nothing you can do to them. They sold you a piece of paper. You could go back after the seller or whatever. But in that transaction off market, you're not going to have a seller's disclosure, and you're not going to have a lead-based paint disclosure. You're not going to have any of the documents that you would have like on a represented transaction where we have to have, state compliance with certain documents that have to be on file, and we have to carry errors and omissions insurance and things like that as a broker or a brokerage or an agent that worked for a brokerage. There's different things in play to protect buyers from sellers and sellers from buyers and agents from all of them, and you from the agents. And, the title companies are there to make sure that you get the right title commitment prior to closing, so that when you do close, you get a warranty deed, which means if anyone comes back after the closing and tries to claim that there was some sort of problem with the title before you close, like then the title insurance policy is going to protect you. The title company is going to help you with a claim so that you can fight against that. And it's not going to really be at your cost because you paid to insure the title prior to you buying the property. And that's a seller paid fee. But on a buy side transaction, when you're in a wholesale deal on an assignment type contract, they want you to pay the closing fee for both buyer and seller. They want you to pay for the title policy. They want you to pay for the transfer tax and a lot of other stuff. It just depends on the deal. It can really be different depending on who you are dealing with or what they're asking for. And you really got to know what all that stuff is and what it means. It's really dangerous for somebody who's not, very seasoned in buying houses to, get tripped up on this stuff and get screwed. I mean, there are people in this market who, and I'm dealing with one of them right now, and I'm not going to mention this person by name, but this person, 5 years ago ripped off, and it's documented, and there's all kinds of legal proceedings and court lawsuits and things like that have taken place because of this. This person, went to a certain nationality of people over in Europe, and they created this marketing campaign, and they sold all these properties to people from this particular country. I'm not going to make it be as vague as possible, right? But there was a certain demographic of people who houses were being marketed to them where, you essentially would have a house with a tenant and you'd buy it for an agreed price, and then it was already being managed, and like you would basically buy the property and it'd stay with the current manager, and it was being promised that you'd receive a return on your investment of like ridiculous numbers, like 15 to 20%. So all these people over there jumped on board, and they trusted this person who was like this internet, influencer type person who was all over IG and Twitter. And, even this guy was even on YouTube, Pinterest, TikTok, all this stuff. And I mean, the videos looked very good together. And so this guy sold all of these houses over the course of a couple of years. And willingly sold houses that they knew the tenants weren't even there. There were squatters in the house or they were vacant. They sold houses knowing that, what they were selling to the people was absolutely incorrect. They did it on purpose, and people paid big bucks, and they closed house after house after house. And then the problem is you buy a house from someone you don't know, and they're saying they're going to take care of everything, and you have somebody vouching for them that this is going to work. And then all of a sudden you're not getting your rent. And now you're in another country. You don't speak the language. You don't have really any resources except for this one person who you trusted to guide you in the right direction. And that person screws you. And then you have to figure out how to come to America in the Detroit market and find people to help you resolve this problem. And then after that, not only do you have to fight that fight, you have to come here or hire an attorney at a pretty large expense to fight on your behalf. And depending on how these contracts are written and everything, you may have signed away all of your obligations and all of your rights to even fight this by not knowing the paperwork that you're signing. And in this case, it happened. And a lot of these people tried to take a civil route, to sue and all that. And because of the paperwork that was done, which was clearly unethical, but it wasn't quote unquote illegal, a lot of them ended up with houses that were sitting for years because they couldn't do anything with them because they had squatters and some of them, the houses were taken by the Detroit Land Bank. Some of them were, in foreclosure. There was all kinds of horror stories that took place. There was another guy in this market who did the same kind of a scheme but this time it was with a different country, different, nationality of people where, at first it started off where they were selling people houses just like that, where they claimed there was a tenant and that they'd receive immediate rent and all they had to do was just collect money. It was all going to be great. And then it turned out after a while, the guy started literally having these people wire money directly to his bank account and claimed that it was the title. So he would create a fake email with his bank account information that would go to a specific title company. And these people from other countries didn't know the difference. So they were wiring money directly to him. And he was selling people properties that weren't even legally his. He was literally just ripping them off straight up. And that was something that I found myself. I was one of the first people that figured it out because someone reached out to me from that country and asked me if I would help. And that was when I found out that, some of these houses that were sold, the closing paperwork that the buyer had was fraudulent. It was completely fraudulent. The whole thing. They photoshopped, title documents. They photoshopped the signatures off other documents of the title representatives. And I'm the one who brought that paperwork to the title company and said, your signature is on this paper. And, the person was like, that's not my signature. And we were able to see that, it was transposed off something else and it wasn't real and so on and so forth. And that guy his name was Sean Tissue, and he was arrested and he got a federal prison sentence for it. And it's on the news. You can Google his name. And that's why I don't have a problem talking about that. His name was Sean Tissue, and he got sentenced to a federal sentence in federal prison. And I remember, the guy thought he was never going to see any repercussion for it. And the federal government said, no, buddy, you're going to pay the price. And they ended up raiding his house and made a huge thing. It was in the newspaper. It's all over the internet. And this guy, tried to pretend like he didn't know what he did wrong. But long story short, he ended up in cuffs, and now he's in prison, and he's losing, 10 plus years of his life in prison for being a scumbag and ripping off innocent people. So this is some of the banter that I'm going to talk about on my podcast, because these are thoughts that go through my mind every time that I go onto these groups and I see a new person saying, hey, I, got with the wrong person and it didn't work out favorably. And most of the time they're little bumps in the road, but sometimes they're really, really bad situations that are caused by someone going to someone who they didn't vet them properly. They didn't really do their research. That person was a really good talker, silver tongue, devil type person who, sounded like they knew everything and it was all just right. And, they baited them in and sold them a couple things and ran on them. Most of the time that's what it is. Somebody sounds like they're doing a really nice job and they care, and then they sell you a few things, and then you start experiencing the issues that they They made it sound like they were going to be willing to address with you. And that's when they run. That's when they say, oh, I'm sorry. I just sold you the house and, I'm not there for that. I'm not your property manager. You're going to have to call this person. You're going to have to call that person. The other part of it is the property management companies. There's a few of them here that are absolutely a risk to deal with. And it's documented. And if you're a part of the local investor groups, you'll see post after post after post of people who are victimized by property management companies that are not run by like a legitimate real estate broker, which is a requirement. There's all of these little mom and pop property management companies that real estate agents start them and regular people start them or whatever. And then they onboard you in and they promise you they're going to do a good job. And they basically just take your money and they don't do anything. And when times get tough, they basically just shut down and move on. And then you're screwed. And then you got to figure out what to do. I've also seen, it was 2 years ago, a guy, he came and he bought houses, and the houses, as soon as he bought them, someone came to the house, broke in, took possession of the house, marketed the houses on Facebook Marketplace for land contracts, and actually changed the locks and everything, showed the house like they were the owner, and signed fake land contracts with like potential buyer, took down payments from them. And then, a couple months later, when they go to take possession, now there's an occupant in the property and they're like, I'm the owner. I have a land contract right here. I put down $20,000. I put down $15,000. And to the point where the person who scammed them even comes over for a couple months and collects the payments on the land contract until the gig is up, right? And then they find out and then they disappear or whatever, but they got their money. So the moral of the story, excuse me, the moral of the story is you got to figure out, and it starts with something as easy as Googling someone, right? Like me, for example. If I'm telling you that I'm doing this and I'm doing that, go in the Google, type me in, type my name, David Rabior, Clyde Realty, Detroit Buy, Hold, Invest, whatever. You're going to go on to Zillow and see all these reviews. You're going to go on to Google and see all these reviews. You're going to see page after page of me and what I do. I'm just out there doing what I do, and it gets picked up by what it gets picked up by, and it's on the internet for people to find, and I can't hide from the good things and I can't hide from the bad things. Fortunately for me, if you look me up, there's no negative stuff. There's nothing, because I pride myself in making sure that I do as much as I can to satisfy every single client that I have. And if somebody's not a good personality fit, I just choose not to work with them. I don't need every dollar. I'm doing really well in my life, so I don't need to work with people who are hard to deal with. I don't need to work with people who aren't serious, and I don't need to sell people properties just to make a commission because I need to pay my bills. My bills are paid. I don't have any debt. So I'm doing this real estate business because I really enjoy it, and I really like helping people build wealth through real estate. That's something that I find very important. I've always wanted to be involved in doing that, and I'm going to continue to do it until I decide I don't want to anymore. And that's why with someone like me, it's a safe bet. You can see who I am. You can go on to any forum or whatever and ask. You go on, if you join some of these local Facebook groups, when somebody asks, do you know a good, investor-based real estate agent, you'll see people, not me, tagging me all the time. That's because I work really hard. People see what I'm doing, and they know that I'm out here doing this job, and they respect me, and I respect them. And I have good relationships with lots of people, and I try not to have enemies, with people. I try not to get into these little, pissing matches online. And to be honest with you, I don't measure myself against other people. I just do what I do. I'm just out here doing the best I can. Me, my assistant, Jessica Kermy, we're out here servicing clients. We have other people that are working for us in tandem with our, contractors that we work with and property management companies we work with, real estate attorneys. And all of us are out here and we're trying to, give the greater good to people. And, we're very transparent. We don't care. People research us. I don't care if you come over to my house. You can sit down at my kitchen table, have a beer with me, and we can talk about whatever you want to. I'll meet you in a restaurant. I'll meet you at the title company. I'll meet you wherever you want. You can drive around with me for a day just to see what a day in the life is like. And I think pretty soon we're going to start filming that because of how many properties I go through in a week. Is probably somewhere around 30 to 50 per week that I personally walk through. And some weeks it's like 20, but it's a lot. And with that, every day I'm walking through all these different properties, different architectural styles, different neighborhoods, different conditions. And every day I have to walk through these properties on camera and point out, just like a home inspector, what everything is, the condition of the roof, the foundation, the windows, the gutters, the furnace, the water tank, electrical, plumbing, all that stuff. This is stuff that I've been doing for years. So if I'm working with a client, I want them to see the value that I have before they even waste any money on trying to get a home inspector or anything. I've already gone there and I've taken video and pointed out and narrated on the video everything that they need to know. So at the end of that, when I send the video, a lot of them are like, hey, based on what you've said, I'm ready to buy. Or based on what you've said, I think that we should get an inspection. And then the conversation is me saying, hey, I agree, or me saying, no, the house is too messed up and I don't think you should buy it. You can get a way better deal. Let's just do that. And with that, I continue to make customers happy with that type of service. And this, particular podcast is, who do you trust? Like, you trust nobody. Especially when you're coming in from out of the market. Don't trust anybody. Meet them, talk to them, go online, look them up, see what you can find, see if they have reviews, see what company they work for. See, all this stuff is so easy to find. So don't trust anybody. Go on there to the internet, look it all up, maybe join a couple of groups, ask around about somebody, ask for references, ask an agent for references. Like me personally, if you said, hey, can I talk to, the last 5 people that you sold rental properties to? I'd be like, sure, here's their names and their phone numbers. And I'd let them know that you're going to call, and I'd tell them the truth. Tell them how your experience, what you thought, how you felt. And if you think you're going to continue to work with me, and I don't need to coach you, just tell them what you believe, because I cannot remember a negative interaction I've had with a client probably in 7 years. I can't make everybody happy, but it's never going to be an issue with me misrepresenting or something like that. Sometimes it's just, there's some clients that, they want me to go out and look at 30 houses before they even commit to one, and then they're still sketchy about it. And I, unfortunately, am at a point in my career where I just don't have the time to nurture that type of an investor. And I try to pass them on to agents that work for me so that they can spend a little bit more time with them. But me, I'm more of an advanced investor type of an agent. So when I'm going out with purpose, and everything I'm doing needs to matter. It needs to make, it needs to make me money, or the potential to make me money for me to go out there and do the service that I offer. Just like every day when you show up to your job, like you show up to your job with the intention of getting paid. You wouldn't go there if you didn't. Now, that doesn't mean that I believe every house I look at, investors should buy, because I'm telling them not to buy 8 out of every 10. Maybe 2 out of 10, I'm giving the thumbs up. But if I'm going out and servicing a client and going through house after house after house, and they're just not doing anything, like eventually I got to go and focus my time and effort on clients that are more, prone to buying things, because this is what I'm in the business of doing. Right. So I'm going to end this here. I'm going to do probably another episode in regard to this, but I want to just make it clear, do not just watch a TikTok video or an Instagram post or whatever and be like, oh, that looks cool, I'm just going to go in, and like, don't talk to anybody else. Like, you got to do your research, because the majority of these people that have these big internet presences on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook or whatever, and they're putting up all these reels all the time and stuff, like, they're really not out here doing anything. They're not. And you can publicly, go on to, Zillow even. If you go on to Zillow and look somebody up as an agent, and you can go down there and see what their like transactions are, that's not always going to tell the story, because like with me, no, it might say I did 100 deals last year when I did 240. That's because I do so many other type of deals. I'm doing land contract deals. I'm doing on-market deals. I'm doing a lot of off-market deals, probably more off-market deals every year than I do on, because that's where all the good deals are at. And that's what the investors want. So that's not going to be in public record. But that being said, if you're doing your research and you go onto Zillow and you go onto Facebook and you go onto Instagram and you go on to some of these real estate groups and you type in the Google and all that, and you start looking around, like, you should be able to come to a conclusion that somebody is actually doing a good job or somebody is a fraud, right? Because in this day and age, if you can't go on to the internet within 10 minutes and find out the majority of what you want about someone who claims to be like a public entity like me, a public figure, somebody who's out there promoting themselves as a business to the public. If you can't find out a good majority of what you want to know within like 10-minute search, you got to really question if that person's telling you the truth about the level in which they do business. And if you look up their business and they don't have a Google page and they have no reviews or anything like that, you got to really be skeptical that that person's telling you the truth. And all of these people that I know that are doing stuff at a high level, they have a presence and they have sometimes an abundant amount of reviews. And then you start looking into that and seeing that it's like real estate groups where the one agent, let's say I had, 25 agents that worked under me. Any agent that works for me, when they do a sale, it's going to go under my name. And then any review that they get is going to go under my name. So when I market myself under my name, you're going to see the reviews of 25 people coming up under me, right? And if you start reading them, you'll see different names associated with those reviews, because that's how teams present this image to the public, that they're doing all of this volume as themselves, as one person, but it's really a team of people. So there's a lot of smoke and mirrors type stuff, and I'm here to educate the people so you understand a little bit better about how this all works. But the point is, you got to do your research, and you cannot trust anybody. You have to verify everything. And once you do verify and you find somebody that's a good fit, and you look them up and everything looks good, and you kick it off with them personality wise, and they go out and they start doing work, then you can start with actions determining whether or not you believe that somebody is right to work with you, for you, and whether or not you believe they're going to get you into the right situation that you're looking for, and that they also are there for you with the resources that you're going to need after the sale. Because buying a house is not hard to do. Sometimes it can be frustrating, but it's not hard to do. Selling a house is not hard to do. It's what you're going to do between the time that you buy and you sell. That's where the money is really ultimately made. And that's where, if you're putting your trust into somebody to help you, they need to be able to deliver. They need to for sure be able to deliver on the promises of how to operate. And, it's up to you as a person who owns real estate to operate on your own. But if you're working in unison with somebody who is going to put you in front of the resources that you need, that you can trust, you don't have to worry about getting ripped off. You don't have to worry about being poorly managed. You don't have to worry about bad contractors running off with your deposits and this and that and the other thing. Like, that's the person that you need. And this is what we offer at Detroit Buy, Hold, Invest. This is what I offer personally as a real estate agent, a real estate investor, and one of the highest producing agents in the Detroit market. That is not disputable. It's all out there for public record. And anybody who comes to Detroit that works with investment-based realtors, at some point, we're going to cross paths. It's just a matter of time. And the 80-20 rule applies to Detroit, where 80% of us aren't doing anything. 20% of us are doing the most of it, throwing the chunks back. The little scraps are going to that 80%. The 80-20 rule, I'm like in the top 2% of that, top 3%. So all of the big agents that are doing all the volume, I'm one of those people. I know all the people that are doing it. We all work together. We all have good intentions, and we all want people to win. And then after you get out of that top, 20%, you really got to be worried about, at all times, you have to be concerned, and you got to have your eyes open. Do not believe that, you meet someone, it goes well for one or two transactions and it's just all good. It's just like, it's such a gamble, and you have to be ready. And that's why you need to make sure that you deal with the professionals that have a proven track record that you can easily look up online to see if they are who they say they are. And then as you work together, you lean on that person, and you'll be able to see very quickly if they have the best of intentions, and that if they're there for you long term, and they're going to be there for you for any struggle that you get, and anything that's good and anything that's bad. I'm with you for the highs. I'm with you for the lows. I'm with you all the time. Anyway, this is David Rabior, Detroit Buy, Hold, Invest, Clyde Realty. You can reach me at 313-451-0448, or you can reach out to me on my website, www.detroitbuyholdinvest. David Rabior, Clyde Realty. We out.